Welcome in to You Down with IDP. I am your host this week. Joe Roxanne is out another week. She, I believe, is visiting family in Seattle. So we have in the wrong positions, Jorge now up top, Nate now down below. Gentlemen, how are we?
I'm doing great. Sucks that I missed last week, but very happy to be back on the show this week and share some good IDP advice for y'all.
Heck yeah, I'm excited. Nate, how are you?
Doing good, fellas. Doing good, guys. It seems like each week this news and notes type thing is getting longer and longer and more involved and scary and scarier.
Oh, yeah. So starting with that, Blake Martinez retires. I don't think many people had Blake Martinez, so I wouldn't say that's a crushing blow to many.
So it's funny that you mentioned that because this morning I was looking to upgrade my linebacker position, and in every money league I'm in with friends, IDP leagues, Blake Martinez was available. And I'm like, hell yeah, no more Divine Diablo. Give me Blake Martinez. I got him in all my leagues in the AM. By the afternoon, he retired. Just all sorts of just frustration.
Rip. R.I.P. Denzel Perryman did not practice along with Cole Holcomb. Cole Holcomb, the leading tackler on his team. He's been an under the radar kind of guy for IDP in over the last couple years. So could be big for you. TJ Watt returned, but limited. We'll see how much he's actually used, but when he's used, if he's even in there for 10 snaps, you're playing him.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter. If he's in, you're playing him. Devondre Campbell didn't practice. That's big. That is huge. Miles Jack did not practice. I believe at one point this year, Miles Jack had the third most tackles in the NFL.
He had a good streak going. He may
He
or may not be mentioned later. We'll see with the caveat.
Yeah, he was feeling good. Budda Baker is out. That is massive this week for Arizona. The only reason they can even somewhat cover a tight end, and even then they can't really do it. So Tyler Higbee could see some action this week. And Xavier McKinney's ATV accident on the bye week.
Yep.
He was placed on the short-term IR, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So minimum 4 weeks. I mean, at this point, do you even keep him on your roster for fantasy playoffs, or are you just dropping him at this point?
Yeah, I didn't want to keep him on my roster prior to the ATV accident. Better real life player than fantasy player, contrary to most of the people we talk about, which are better fantasy players than actual players.
You know what concerns me about this Budda Baker thing is that they announced this Tuesday. Like, they didn't even wait till the first practice session. Like, it has to be pretty bad his ankle if that's what is being declared, so early on in the week.
Mm-hmm.
Does Arizona have their bye next week? Maybe that's why they announced it so early.
No, they don't. Do they? Oh, I'm sorry. Don't do. Is that a question or is that a statement?
Yeah. What was that, Joe?
No, because
it was a question.
No, they play San Francisco in week 11, and then week 12 they play the Chargers.
LA, and then they have a bye.
Then they have the bye. Yeah. Yowzers.
Yeah. So I was thinking, like, okay, maybe if they're announcing him out, maybe they're like, okay, we don't need him against LA this week. Let's just sit him, give him 100% extra rest. That is definitely worrisome right there. Okay. Beyond the field, let's dive into it, folks. Jorge?
Yes, sir.
Pretty good week at the defensive line position. Uchenna Nwosu, it's just been on an absolute tear for most of this season. Finished defensive lineman 7 with 18.3 points. Nick Bolton, Kansas City, just overall tough game.
It was tough. You would think the old adage, start your inside linebackers against Derrick Henry and the Titans would, nope, not last week. Did not happen last week.
I didn't watch the game too in depth, but Nate, obviously you did.
Mm-hmm.
Were they not stacking the box or anything like that, or were Tennessee just that good at beating them?
A little bit of both. So no, it's not a little bit of both, because they were stacking the box. I mean, they were stacking the box, and then they even could do it more, because if you saw into that game, they didn't complete a pass to a receiver the entire game. Tennessee did. Now that's a lot on Malik Willis, but everything went away from Nick Bolton as much as possible. Granted, when you're in the middle linebacker, it's hard to go away from constantly, but it felt like Derrick Henry would get to that second level, and they did a good job of trying to phase out Nick Bolton and allowing Derrick Henry to try to get to that second level where the tacklers aren't as Nick Bolton-esque, if you will. It was just not a great game altogether.
Well, did you see how like one of his red zone carries, I think they were within the 10-yard line where Derrick Henry ended up scoring a touchdown. It was the cornerback who was tasked with stopping him, being the final line of defense to get into the end zone, not a linebacker. So yeah, just great scheming on the Titans' part. Not so great for Nick Bolton managers.
No, it was rough.
Defensive back Jaquan Brisker, also a tough week. Only 6 points, which again surprising with how much Miami was active in the passing game. But
yeah. And he plays close to the line of scrimmage. You would think with, the acquisition of Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert that they were going to be emphasizing the running game more. But no, they just went at it. And it's crazy because you hear about the wind conditions and whatnot. You would think that would lean towards more of a run-based offense, or at least a short to intermediate-based offense in the passing game, which that was the case. It just so happens that when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle who can take you to the house on short passes, that kind of gets in your way there. But Joe, if you don't mind going back to some of these hits and misses from last week, I put some information down in our show sheet that I kind of wanted to give people an idea of like what exactly does a hit or miss kind of represent.
Sure.
And I think this kind of gives people a little bit of an idea of like the ranges we're working with when we're talking about a DL, LB, DB 1, 2, or 3. I think 1, 2, or 3 can tradition. There's no such thing as a traditional IDP league, but a lot of the IDP leagues that I play in, we have 3 per position. That seems to be a norm amongst people that I know. So let's just go with that for the sake of argument. When looking at the DL, a person who finished as a DL 1, 2, or 3 in terms of Fantasy Pros points, that range of points goes from 29.3 all the way to 8. Uchenna Nwosu, 18.3. So right there in the middle there. Nick Bolton had 5.5 points, which just, again, we talked about this, just utterly sucked. The range for a linebacker 1 through a linebacker 3 was 27 to 9.8. And going back to Jaquan Brisker, this is the one that just really, really hurts. DB 1 through 3, their fantasy point range last week was 25.8 to 10.5. He only got you 6. Just really disappointing on the DB and LB front. But here's the thing. I would love to sit here and tell you, IDP people, that these ranges are consistent from week to week. They are not consistent from week to week.
Not at all.
And what do you consider a miss? Obviously, for example, talking about Jaquan Brisker, he got you 6 points. Well, the lowest one was a 10.5. That makes sense. That's a definitive bust. Cool. I own it. That's fine. But if he got you 10.4, would you still call that a bust, even though the LB3 ends at 10.5? I don't know. It's very subjective, which makes getting these picks really hard to nail down. But I still believe process over results takes precedent, and we hit more often than we don't. And it's just it was just a bad week at the DB and LB positions. Things should have worked out the way they were meant to, but they didn't. And that's life. You move on and you get ready for your next matchup.
Yes, sir. And your next matchups this week: Jerry Hughes, defensive line, for your defensive line pick against the Giants. Miles Jack, if he plays, against the Saints, and then Julian Love against the Houston Texans. I'll let you break them down as you will.
Sure. So Jerry Hughes, according to Fantasy Pros ECR, is the defensive line 43, taking on the New York Giants. What's really great about Jerry Hughes is he's leading the Texans in sacks with 7 on the season. He got 2 against Jalen Hurts last week, which, given the mobility that Jalen Hurts possesses, that's really impressive that he was able to do so. Again, jury's out on good football player in real life versus good fantasy player in real life. I think it's one of those situations where the stars have to align with a good matchup. And I think he has a good matchup this week against Tyree Phillips of the New York Giants, who started in week 8 in replacement of Evan Neal, who is playing god-awful. Well, in week 8 versus the Seahawks, Tyree Phillips was playing pretty badly, gave up 2 sacks. Jerry Hughes lines up wherever the matchup is. And he's been super productive. He gets a lot of pressures. And I just really think that it's going to be one of the situations where, whether it's Saquon Barkley getting to his side, or if it's Daniel Jones, people could tell me, oh, well, Daniel Jones, he can scramble. So can Jalen Hurts. And he got 2 sacks off of Jalen Hurts. So I'm not really worried about Daniel Jones running away from Jerry Hughes. So I see him having a good week, getting up into that DL3 range for you, surpassing his ECR of DL43. Going to linebacker here, and again, caveat, Nate or Joe, you mentioned it earlier, Miles Jack did not practice this week, and it's never a good thing when your players are missing practice coming off of a bye. That's generally not a great recipe for success. But let's just say that he does end up getting a limited practice in, and then getting a limited or full practice in tomorrow, seeing some upward trajectory here. This could be a really big game for him. You mentioned it earlier also, TJ Watt, even if he's playing, 40% of the snaps or 30% of the snaps, that's TJ Watt in the field. And you have him, and opposite of him, you have Alex Highsmith. These skill players, for the Saints, whether it's Kamara or Hill or whoever the hell's running the ball, they're not going to want to go to the outside because you're going to be met really quickly with some resistance for these edge rushers, which I believe is going to help funnel this running game up the middle. When you look at the Steelers' defense, they allow on average, and I'm talking fantasy points here, 20 points to opposing running back. So that interior of the defensive line, what that really is getting at, outside of Cameron Hayward, is kind of suspect. So I really think these running backs for the Saints can kind of get to that next level, which is right there, right up the alley of Miles Jack, Devin Bush. I'm not really worried about Devin Bush from an IDP perspective. Give me Miles Jack. I think he gets on track from an IDP perspective. He's been out a couple weeks in terms of getting you double-digit fantasy points. I think he exceeds his LB29 ranking this week, getting you good high to mid LB2 numbers. And then rounding us out here at defensive back, the ECR defensive back 32, Houston versus the Houston Texans, New York Giants, Julian Love. Coming off the bye, he posted a couple weeks ago 7 total tackles for 9 fantasy points. And, Damian Pierce, have you heard of him? Did you see him run all over the place? He's basically the Texans' only viable offensive piece that you have to worry about here. The linebacking situation for the Giants is still suspect. Love, who I believe over the past 3 weeks has 3 games played, has 20 box snaps to 3 free safety snaps. So he is crowding that line of scrimmage. He is getting to the running backs, getting in that backfield. And again, over the past month, from a fantasy point perspective, he's averaging 13.2 points per game. Look at the Texans. We saw what their recipe for staying in games was, which is running the ball. I don't see that changing. And it's not so much because they're not creative; it's they don't have any other option. So look for the Texans to run the ball against the Giants, and look for Julian Love to kind of be the primary beneficiary on that defense.
Yeah, I want to see with New York exactly how they deploy Dane Belton and Julian Love, because I don't know that answer yet. I'm very intrigued to see who they trust more between the two deep, and I don't know if they trust either. And then it's a matter of, I think it's probably Belton, which does help Julian Love, exponentially. But that could be a sneaky thing to pay attention to, especially in this matchup. Just because I don't think we know. We've never had to worry for. The Giants haven't had to worry for a year and plus because Xavier McKinney plays every snap. So they've always been lined up. I'm very intrigued to see that. And I think that's going to pay dividends for Love for in my opinion. I agree with you, but something to monitor, I guess.
We do have a question here from Rich.
All right.
Isaiah Simmons against the Rams or Michael Walker tonight against the Panthers? Jorge.
Walker. This is going to be a running affair here for the Carolina Panthers, which is literally right up Michael Walker's alley. I'd go Walker here.
Nate.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the weather's going to play a little bit of a factor tonight too. Keep the ball short to intermediate, and that plays up there. Even though Isaiah Simmons, I will say, has been playing better. He's getting comfortable with that slot role, but I don't like the volatility of it.
I just don't like saying Isaiah Simmons is playing well. That just doesn't.
I know.
I gotta get the steel wool and scrub the dirtiness off my body just saying that out loud. But it's not wrong. You're not wrong.
I love Isaiah Simmons. I think if you need a guy who's going to make potentially more splash plays and you get rewarded better on sacks, I think Isaiah Simmons is your guy, or turnovers. But tackle heavy leagues, Michael Walker's the guy. So
yeah,
unless you need a splash, I don't think Michael Walker's going to give you a splash. I think Isaiah Simmons is going to give you the splash. So I'm happy Isaiah Simmons is playing well. About damn time Cliff Kingsbury utilized him, right? Okay. I didn't make any picks this weekend because I'm hosting, but I'll go over last week. I had Jalen Phillips. He finished at defensive lineman 53. Disappointing after getting Bradley Chubb. And again, granted, I mean, Justin Fields was...
Fields.
Yeah. If Chicago keeps running a high school offense, Justin Fields is going to be the RB1 and quarterback one by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not throwing the football. And when they do, it's, just bitchy pass throws. My linebacker, I'm happy I nailed on this because I like this guy. Drew Tranquil, linebacker 3. Hit that one well. That one felt good. And then my biggest swing that I warned you was going to be the biggest swing probably was Michael Carter, DB 112. I apparently should have gone with Sauce Gardner, who had 7 tackles, which wasn't expecting.
No, why if you're the offense would you go Sauce Gardner's direction? Why not attack Michael Carter? It just doesn't. Maybe that's why they lost the game too.
Exactly.
Dipshit. I mean,
exactly. So, I mean, Sauce Gardner looked great, but yeah, I don't get. Michael Carter should have had much more. He almost had an interception return, so that'd have been close.
Yeah.
Josh, you didn't even know Michael Carter also played for the defensive side of the football for the Jets, so you can can it, buddy. You can can it. Nate, you nailed your defensive lineman. Javon Hargrave finished as the #1 defensive lineman last week. Congratulations on a giant bounce back after
thank you
multiple weeks of just
not DL1
tough.
Finish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shaq Thompson, linebacker 31. Not great, not bad.
I mean, it was less than he finished lower than his ECR. But if you have Shaq Thompson finishing as an LB3, I think that's kind of where your comfort level's at with him anyway.
Startable. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Your defensive back is Amani Hooker. He didn't play, so that's a wash. And I'll let you go through this, but you got Dexter Lawrence at defensive line, linebackers Jayon Brown, and defensive back is Rodney McLeod, as you are.
Yeah. I'm going to jump back into that offensive line pool of the Houston Texans and that leaky sieve that they have there in the middle. Kenyon Green, Scott Quisenberry, atrocious. Dexter Lawrence has been phenomenal. Not much more I have to say about a nose tackle that I'm going to, this is back-to-back weeks now where I'm taking a defensive tackle / nose AB gap type personnel.
Heck yeah.
And Kenyon Green and Scott Quisenberry are the perfect recipes for fantasy success. 42 pressures allowed to nose tackle or defensive tackles occupying that AB gap on the season. And so I just have to believe this is another one of those situations. Dexter Lawrence is solid against the run as well. So if they try to run up his way, and the nice thing is you have another big body in Leonard Williams next to him that they can't give him the entire attention. They're starting to get pieces back defensively along the pass rush slowly. And so I just like it. I think that interior is so bad. Can't predict the defensive line 1, but I will say I have Dexter Lawrence within my DL 1-2 range right there.
Heck yeah.
So we shall see.
Light him up, baby.
The second one, this is just, on the heels of Blake Martinez and the heels of Denzel Perryman and the fact that there's just honestly, I mean, if you can name me 2 Las Vegas linebackers right now, not you personally, but just the collective view of everybody watching, congratulations, because you nailed the names Luke Masterson, Darian Butler, and Jayon Brown. If I'm going to look for a person who's going to step up and actually just be on the field the majority of the time, this is assuming Denzel Perryman's out. If he plays, I'm not as happy with Jayon. I'm not as happy with Jayon in any way, just because it's Jayon Brown. But veteran status. Got to go back. You know, I mean, he hasn't played a snap since week 4. But if he steps in and he gets 100% of the snaps and he has the perfect matchup as far as opportunity, because I don't see him leaving the field. He's had a top 48 finish on the season, week 2, one of his 4 weeks. So that's pretty much what I'm predicting or hoping for is a bye-week replacement, injury replacement. You need like an LB3-4. This isn't an LB1, and you take what you can kind of get and call it a day. It's gross, guys. I'm sorry, but it's Indy. It should be run heavy, and it just seems like that's an 8 to 9 tackle floor.
Especially with what you call it, with Jonathan Taylor apparently getting in full participation in practice. That's
correct.
And then Sam Ellinger is not exactly lighting the world on fire. You know, we're talking offense just for a bit there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, who's the new coach? Jeff
Saturday, former
Mr.
center.
Mr. Hog Molly, Jeff Saturday.
Yeah, and if there's anything, he's going to want to most likely just run it down their throats as much as possible, because that, even though he, give the ball to good old Peyton, I don't think that's his mantra is to, he doesn't have Peyton Manning. He has Sam Ellinger. I'm sorry, that's not quite the mastermind behind the behind center. But yeah, I like Jayon Brown there. Pay attention to his snaps. It's gross, not that much fun. It's kind of like Rodney McLeod at safety. Rodney McLeod is an opportunistic situation. Same thing on the opposite side of the ball, though. Indy is playing against a Vegas team that I don't know who they can throw the ball to. As I asked you to name Vegas linebackers, hell, give me 2 receivers for Vegas, not named Matt Collins, because that's about the only one left. And
is Devontae out?
I think they're all out.
I know Renfro's on IR, Waller's on IR.
Waller, I don't think unless I'm just completely having a brain
fart. Moreau?
I mean,
is it Foster Moreau? I always get them confused. Thank you, Foster Moreau.
Foster Moreau, Devontae Adams.
And I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
So, and don't get me wrong, they can throw the ball to Devontae 25 times. But if I'm putting on the headset of the offensive coordinator, I'm probably going to lean on Josh Jacobs a little bit more. And if I lean on Josh Jacobs a little bit more, Rodney McLeod playing, 70+% of the snaps, 80+ really within the line of scrimmage and in the slot. And it just seems like that's everything within his direction. I hate Rodney McLeod personally because of the whole Nick Cross thing. We were so gung-ho on Nick Cross being the starter there. And Nick Cross played himself out of the role more so than Rodney McLeod played himself into that role. But line of scrimmage snaps, opportunity against the team, game flow seems as if it's just going to feed towards Rodney McLeod having a good defensive back tackle upside.
Sure.
Random question. Starting now, 0-0 win-losses. Who gets more wins the rest of the season, Jeff Saturday or Josh McDaniel?
Jeff Saturday.
See, I think so too.
Yeah,
that's the
Jeff Saturday.
I don't know if I guess Josh McDaniels stays for the whole season. I don't think they're gonna give up on him this early. But
you can't give up on him. That's bad if you give up on him this early. I think
it's bad that you gave him an opportunity, because I don't think as a head coach he's proven to anybody anything over any time. But
he's garbage. I agree with you.
If you're a seedling falling from the Belichick tree, you automatically grow a resume of a head coaching upside, and then they find out that you're sour and they just let you ride on the ground back at the offensive coordinator role. That's what's going to happen.
Correct. Again. Some people are just better as coordinators.
Yeah, that's
accept
fine.
It.
Just
accept it.
Accept it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Lowered expectations. Jorge, you had Cam Jordan last week. Defensive lineman, 80 back-to-back weeks down on Cam Jordan. You nailed it. I had Kevin Byard. Missed. It's fine. It's fine.
That has a lot to do with Amani Hooker being out. I promise you, because that changed a lot of the assignments for Kevin Byard too.
100%. And then Nate, you had Roquan Smith. linebacker 65. I didn't watch too much Monday Night Football, but was he being rotated in? Was he the main guy?
Was not the main guy, but as far as rotation wise, he played more than enough snaps. I'll tell you exactly. I want to say it was around 65%, if I'm not mistaken.
It's enough for him to perform.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I said 50% is what my expectation was. He played 39 out of the 51 snaps, so probably closer to 70%.
There you go. All right. Good. This week, Jorge, you have Zadarius Smith against the Bills. That's a big one.
It is a big one. You know, if you head over, if you looked at, for those who realize, you know, where Nate and I were with Fantasy and Frames, and so one of the sits I had last week on our Instagram was Zadarius Smith, and the rationale was where he was lining up, and he was lining up against Charles Leno last week for the Washington Commanders. You know, the only good shining bright spot for the Washington Commanders offensive line that gave him fits, and Danielle Hunter had the better matchup, and Danielle Hunter, did his thing. One of my concerns, though, was Zadarius Smith last week also, was the fact that against Arizona, he traveled along the offensive line looking for those mismatches, and he took advantage of those mismatches versus the Cardinals, primarily playing against guard or going over center. He did not do that last week. He played predominantly against tackle, which was kind of limiting, which is, again, kind of surprising why they didn't realize that going against this horrible offensive line for the Commanders. This week, he's going to be lined up against Deion Dawkins, who's allowed only 14 pressures on the season. And now this can be misleading, okay? How good is an offensive lineman really when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen who can take off and avoid pressure? That's the $1 million question.
True.
Okay. When RG3 was in Washington, everybody was like, oh my God, this Washington offensive line is like, well, once RG3 stopped running, we saw very quickly this offensive line got really bad really quick. So that's something to keep in mind here. That being the case, obviously, I don't know if you've realized this, Case Keenum is probably going to be playing this week. I don't see Josh Allen. If they put Josh Allen out there, the Bills are morons. They need to get this guy some time to relax.
Yes.
He'll heal up that elbow. So I'm going under the assumption that it is going to be Case Keenum. I don't see him being a punching bag. I don't think the Bills want to have him be a punching bag. I think they want to get the ball out of his hands, get him to the playmakers. This could be a very big, not so much Devin Singletary, who's kind of shown that he's more of like an up-the-gut type of running back based off of volume. Nate, you were alluding to it last night on one of our pods. Somebody like a Nyheim Hines or James Cook or a pass catching back for the Buffalo Bills could be more in line there. And that is an area in terms of coverage that is a weakness for Zadarius Smith, actually. He actually grades out pretty poorly as a coverage edge rusher. So all these things combined, I'm not really high given the matchup. And then let's just say, for example, Josh Allen does play. Well, again, it goes back to the very first thing I said. He can avoid pressure. So this is not great, again, for Zadarius Smith. Either way, really, when you think about it, whether it's Case Keenum or Josh Allen. He's currently going as the Week 10 rankings for ECR DL 11. I think he underperforms at that. I think he gets you closer to a 30.
Okay.
That's big. That's a big one. That makes me wonder, Jorge, do we take him out of our lineup? You and I have a team that we split where we have men. I can't justify that, but maybe we'll talk later.
Yes, we will.
And you have Jerome Baker.
I do. It is my favorite fade player, because it's going to be number one. The first time, actually, it's never the first time that I've mentioned Jerome Baker as a fade. Probably the fourth or fifth time, but it's going to be the last time that I have to, because he won't be someone that people are going to contemplate or be, concerned with starting. Because last week we saw it. Finally, his lack of production led to the defensive coordinator popping the green dot off his helmet, slapping it to a Landon Roberts. Baker saw his 91% snap share dwindle down to 61%. Landon Roberts saw his increase. I don't like Landon Roberts either. Don't get me
He's
wrong.
terrible.
He is a terrible linebacker. I drank the Kool-Aid last year when I listened to some beat writers from Miami and some fans, and they were like, give him time. Big, fast, sideline to sideline, blah, 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 blah. All that rigmarole. Then I watched him, and I thought, he's not that big. It's not that fast. Doesn't make tackles. I don't know what they're talking about. But
I watched him for years. He sucks.
Perfect. But that does concern me that he might be, hey, let's put Landon out there because Jerome's terrible. Crap, Landon's worse. But I think there are people out there that have Jerome Baker. They invested high enough in him. They thought they saw glimpses. You didn't. You didn't at all. You saw that he's done pretty much absolutely zero as far as any splash plays like you've alluded to earlier. So even in those plays, you don't get the sacks or anything like we were expecting out of this, the high blitzing Miami Dolphins defense before. No forced fumbles, no fumble recoveries, none of the big plays you need. And I just don't see him having the snap percentage to support an already, necessary high volume to produce fantasy upside. So see you later. I think that I'd love to say that there's a chance that, he could be something, but he won't be. And
but there isn't.
There's not. I just want to give a little bit of hope in case Jerome Baker's listening, and then crush him back down because you're not going to be on the field anymore.
Nate's like, it's okay, Jerome Baker, because I'm sure there's somebody out there who loves you. Nah, just kidding. Your mom doesn't even love you. Like,
she sat you. She picked up Jayon
mom
Brown.
Sat you. Wow, that's tough.
Would be tough. She ain't no dummy.
In those leagues where you just have one IDP, his mom put in Ogba over him. That's how bad it was.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a tough day when your mom plays Ogba over you.
Exactly. Not even position dependent. It's just a
know,
straight one IDP only. And
that is correct. Yeah.
Well, that's actually an insult. Ms. Baker, we don't want to offend you by assuming that you wouldn't know to not put a defensive line, especially one that is at a rotation piece in Miami. So we're going to go ahead and say that she would have listened to any of our other recommended plays this week, and she would do that. So
yes,
there you are.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. I have one question here from Josh. Tyson Campbell against Kansas City, Kyler Gordon against Detroit.
So the IDP guys invitational scoring,
which you guys know very well.
Yes, I do.
So I don't really know here. I feel like Kyler would have a better tackle upside.
I was going to say the same. I also feel like Kyler's a bigger splash upside too. He's been more involved on the season, at least as a whole. Yeah. I couldn't tell you without looking their exact stats side by side. Sometimes that's misleading, but I can tell you in the games that I've watched Kyler Gordon play, he's instinctive a little bit more so in that I think that he has made some of the big plays that I've watched, but forgive me for not knowing enough. Josh,
what the hell did you do, Josh? What the hell did you do that these are your options? Did you just wait till your very last two picks in your draft?
Sucks at IDP.
I'll just that would do it. Okay.
Sucks at IDP.
There we go.
We go. So
that's not nice. Jeez.
That's okay. I can say that too.
Okay.
I mean, there's really not anyone better on the waiver wire.
Yeah, who are your waiver wire options, Josh? Maybe we can help you a little bit better if we knew just exactly what you're working with here, so we can get you some better options than Tyson Campbell. And
I'm gonna go to the IDP guys invitational.
Yeah, I'm looking at my waiver wires, and I can tell you from a cornerback position, and I know we're in different leagues, but I'm guessing there's probably some similar names. So I'll figure out who's missing and go from there.
All right.
So,
yep.
Well, I'm just going off what MFL has as the highest projection for the week.
All right.
Charvarius Ward.
Oh, wow.
Paulson Adebo.
Mm-hmm.
I like Paulson Adebo this week, actually. That's okay.
Russell Douglas is questionable.
Yeah.
Tyson Campbell. Kyler Gordon is on the list. Martin Emerson.
Yeah.
Dane Jackson. Rock Yassin. Kendall Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
Adoree Jackson. Jamel Dean. Charvarius Ward, Taron Johnson, Desmond King, Jamel Dean, Marlon Humphrey. Charvarius Ward's out there. I'd get Charvarius Ward. Right? I mean, of all of them, Taron Johnson might not be bad, but
yeah, my ears perked up when you said Taron Johnson. I like Paulson Adebo actually this week if I had to pick out of all those.
Mhm.
And then Dane Jackson from the Giants. You wrote him up, and we were talking about him a little bit earlier. Like, we don't know exactly what to expect here, but I mean, if Gordon and Campbell are the hope for upside play, I mean, this is potentially a good spot for the Giants safeties against this Texans defense or offense that's just not awesome. So they could definitely capitalize. We're looking for upside plays here in the situation, right? So who's really going to give you the most upside here? Are the Steelers going to give you the upside, or are the Texans going to give you the upside here? And if so, then you play that defensive player.
And that's a challenge. I will tell you a name that's I didn't hear you say, but I would venture to scroll down a little bit further. I wonder if Marco Wilson is somebody. I want to see what his involvement would be, because he's primarily at left cornerback. That doesn't shock me at all. But do they want to have him play, I don't know. I don't know if that matches up well against Cooper Kupp. And this might not even be a Matthew Stafford-led game. This could be a John Wolford game if he doesn't clear concussion protocol. If that's the case, then it just might be ugly all around. So I might avoid that for that reason. So there's a big roundabout way of not answering a question for Josh.
Paulson Adebo. Let's go with that. If he was available, I would put in Paulson Adebo this week.
There you go.
He says Wilson is available. Yeah, I'm okay with Paulson Adebo. I think he sucks, so I'm good with Adebo.
Very heavily targeted. Very heavily targeted.
Because he sucks.
Exactly.
Get those tackles. There you go.
That's all matters.
Garbage. Absolute garbage. Yeah, I mean, just be smart and draft Kenny Moore. So,
well, yeah, that's coming around a little bit better now.
Yeah. Just for cornerback specifically.
Yeah,
he started off slow for me to start the year. I had AJ Terrell, but he got hurt. I just dropped him. So
who's a consistent, great cornerback for fantasy football that people just gloss over all the time, which I don't get why? Jalen Ramsey. When you're drafting next year, this year, even last year and the year before that, like, he tackles well. For a corner, for IDP purposes, like last week or 2 weeks ago, he finished as the 25th best one. So he gets you the tackles, he gets you the points. Next year, folks, during fantasy draft time, don't shy away from Jalen Ramsey if you're punting the DB position.
I think the stigma around Ramsey is he was playing so much man. Again, it's been a while since he's been in Jacksonville, but he's playing so much man in Jacksonville. People saw him as the shutdown corner. So people are like, oh, he's a shutdown corner. Do the Rams ever even go into man coverage? Like, that entire final drive against the Bucs, they played shell zone coverage 15 yards off the receivers. So if they're going to do that and Ramsey can just push guys out of bounds, it's free points.
Yep.
So, yeah, I agree with you there. Yeah. And Josh said he did have AJ Terrell. He definitely drafted Terrell because of my hype. I think Terrell is just bad enough to let up enough catches, but also just good enough to create turnovers. So
that was an interesting one. I was I was low initially because I didn't think they'd go his direction as much as they were, just because I think there was that overarching fear against him.
Yeah. All right, friends. That's all she wrote. Just another fun day talking IDP, and we got kickoff here in 30 minutes.
Perfect timing.
What a time to be alive.
Awesome. Love talking shop. Love talking defense.
Jorge, Nate,
yes,
thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you both. I forget how to even close out this show because I don't do it normally. Boom. Latest episode of IDP. Ladies and gentlemen, you're down with IDP. Club Fantasy and Fantasy and Frames. Fantasy Frames, you can follow them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy and Frames, all one word. Be sure to check out their website as well, fantasyandframes.com, for all IDP needs. Don't forget, also Dynasty, Redraft, DFS as well. Club Fantasy at Club Fantasy FFL on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The URL is clubfantasyfl.com. Jorge is at Jorge B. Edwards. Nate is at Nate Marcum. Myself is Joe_Zollo. And Roxanne, who is not here, at F Queen Roxanne. Thank you for joining us tonight on You Down with IDP. Always remember, offense may win fantasy, but defense wins fantasy championships. We will see you next week.